Ryan,
Tony, and Crystal.
We can't guarantee that you're gonna look great, but if you wanna stay in shape, well, you better hit the GymWits.
That's right, man.
welcome to the GymWits podcast. I'm Ryan George.
I'm Justin Guild, a.k.a. Chef Sonic.
And I'm Tony Marinucci, a.k.a. Tips with Tony, a registered dietitian.
And we are the GymWits.
So a couple days ago, I really felt like poo. I had a headache. I was so tired I could barely get out of bed. I was like, why am I so tired? And this headache wouldn't go away. I drank water. I took some Advil, and I was just like tired and cranky. And I realized something. I hadn't had any coffee. So I immediately went in and I made myself a nice double espresso. And within a matter of minutes, I was perky and feeling awesome. How you feel, Tone?
So he's rubbing it in because I'm trying to decrease the amount of caffeine that I've been consuming because I hit a tolerance that, like, no matter how much I drink, nothing perks me up. Yeah. Nothing happens. And it's just really frustrating when you're trying to really build a business and work really hard and you have no spurk of, like, nothing's coming out.
So now you understand why all the Wall Street people during the 1980s did cocaine. Eventually, sometimes coffee just doesn't cut it anymore.
It doesn't cut it anymore. Yeah, no. So I'm trying to decrease that, but obviously it's making me. I've noticed that, like, I actually. I feel like I'm a brat recently. Like, I can't, I'm irritable. Everything bothers me. My head hurts. This is a real struggle.
So,
but thank you for coming to my rescue because I'm breaking it by having espresso right now.
I'm your enabler.
You're my enabler. No, but it should be easier to go decrease rather than cut cold turkey.
Oh, yeah,
I think you're right in that. We'll try that.
Absolutely.
I'm honestly doing it so I can feel the effects again. Is that like I sound like an addict?
Yeah.
Well,
I went through
is a
that.
drug.
Like I used to drink about 3 to 4 cups a day. Mm-hmm. And then I stopped when I had this thing in my mouth, and like I had to go on antibiotics, and the doctor was like, "Well, you're gonna have no caffeine." I was like, "I can't do no caffeine. I can do one," and I've been pretty much good about one, except when I come here. Actually, I'll probably have a second one.
So Justin, it's your fault.
Yeah. On Tuesdays sometimes because I get.
Justin, we see you once a week. It's all your fault.
Yeah,
it is. Yeah. Oh, Ryan, send
life?
Tony the picture because
picture? Oh, okay, yeah.
Ryan have a funny here. Send it to her.
Well, I'll send. Yeah.
It's because I wanted to.
How about I send it when we're not recording?
Oh no, because I wanted to see it now, or at least show her the picture because it's sort of funny.
I think he wanted to discuss
I have a sort of a funny story.
All right. Well, what's your story?
So I realized that I had sent out the message, but I didn't realize Tony was coming. I thought you weren't coming today.
Oh.
And so then I said, I'll be there at 1. So now I start freaking out because I hadn't prepared to make Tony any lunch. And I'm like, oh no, because I had prepared something that wasn't the healthiest for Ryan. And today is vegan day for me. So I had like some whatever it is that I was going to eat. And
I sent it.
Oh, you sent it. So, Tony, you can take a look.
I'm waiting.
It's Ryan's lunch right next to mine. So what I made for Ryan, I cooked him a ribeye steak and made him mashed potatoes. How was the steak?
It was good.
It was pretty good. And for me, I ate a bunch of peppers, cucumber, some tortilla chips, some guac, and some hummus, and some carrots.
Well, that was very nice of you.
So that was my lunch. So next to Ryan's, it actually kind of looks pretty funny. But I realized that I hadn't that Tony was coming today. So I was like freaking out. I was like, oh no, like, because I now have to impress Tony. I have to make her something. So I'm like starting to scramble. I'm like, what can I make her? How can I impress Tony, making her something like really healthy and good? And then so I'm like freaking out. I'm like, I got to run out to the store. And then she says, oh, well, I won't have, thanks for the lunch offer, but I will have already eaten by then, which you hadn't it anyway.
I was planning on it, but I had brought lunch with me. That's the thing. But thank you. I really appreciate that you were even tried. That was very nice of you.
So, but next time I'll make an awesome. But next time, Ryan, no steak and potatoes while I eat rabbit food. So
whose fault is that?
So next time I make lunch on Wednesday, it's vegan lunch.
Okay, great. I'll eat before. So I told. Well, you saw. Did you see the picture?
I'm seeing it.
Of my stitches. Oh no!
Wait. Oh no! Your stitches.
My stitches. Yeah.
No.
I'm an idiot. I was. I didn't post. I was gonna post it on the GymWits Facebook. I mean, on the GymWits Instagram. I didn't. Should do that. But I was.
Send it to me. I'll do it right now.
was
I'm
playing with
posting
my
as we
3D
speak.
printer. My 3D printer. Wow. I was playing with my 3D printer, and I when you print stuff, like depending on how not gonna get into a long description. But basically, you have to have support structures for certain parts, and there was support structure, but it was really like attached too well, and so I'm trying to remove it. And often you use it with like a box cutter, something like that. And so I sliced some of my God, I can't talk today. I sliced some of my palm. So I had this nice clean slice. So my initial thought, and we were going to see apartments, which is a whole other adventure for the last week. So I realized, okay, I gotta go see these apartments. I'll just put some liquid glue. It was funny because when I opened it, it was like a nice clean slice, but when I opened it a little bit, you could see like fat and stuff. So I was like, okay, this is pretty deep.
Ew,
but I was like, okay,
gosh.
we'll figure this out. So I just kind of put liquid bandage on it. And then I just went about my day. We looked at apartments, and then the bandage, like the liquid bandage, got hard, but it was just black, like with like just blood. And so at some point, it's like, you know what? I got to go to the doctor. This is not looking good. So we go to the doctor, and the guys, we go to CityMD, and I was seen really quickly. And so the guy's like looking at the liquid bandage. So he starts to peel off the liquid bandage, and he was having a hard time. And then when he finally gets to peel it off, my hand starts squirting blood like you'd see in a movie.
Okay, we should probably put a warning on this.
Yeah.
I don't know if I should.
Yeah,
post
maybe
this.
not.
I'm
Your
not gonna
call.
post it.
So then it starts squirting. It starts squirting
Now
blood.
everyone's gonna want to see it.
I'll post the lunch instead.
Yeah. So it starts squirting blood, and then they stop the bleeding.
Lunch is more disturbing, actually.
And then
if you ask me.
Then they got to stitch it up, and it's not
Valid.
it was 6 stitches or 5 stitches that it took. So, but what happens is he injects me with the Novocaine, which hurt like hell, or not Novocaine, the whatever the painkiller was, hurts like hell. But I guess because I was bleeding so much, the blood actually flushed out the painkiller. So when he starts stitching me up, I felt every bit of that pain because there was no real painkiller there. So, and then what made matters even worse was that I guess the liquid bandage messed up some of the skin. So the first 2 or 3 like stitches popped out, and it was hilarious because he's doing it, and I'm looking away because I can't look, and then I hear him go, "Damn it," and I'm like, okay, that's weird. Why is he saying "damn it"? Then I hear it again, like, "Damn it."
Horrifying.
Then like a minute later, I hear him like he curses, and I was like, "What that? Like my doctor shouldn't be cursing." And he's like, "Yeah, I'm sorry. Look, there's something wrong with this liquid bandage. It really messed up your skin. I got to go deeper." And so it just hurt like hell, and there was no
God,
pain.
that sounds
there was no
horrifying.
painkiller, so it was not fun. But now my hand's all stitched up.
So now
and
you
it
got
seems
a little taste of what it was like to be a soldier in the Civil War.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my God. Did I ever tell you guys about the thing that I had to get the cyst on my head removed? Did we ever talk about that?
No.
It was a very traumatic experience. I'm afraid of needles.
Okay,
but
yeah.
It's still, either way, you could hear them going on my scalp. You're awake. They make you numb, but you can hear it. It's like a local anesthesia. It's horrifying.
Yeah.
I was actually traumatized that day.
Yeah.
It took
So
me an
weird. None
entire
of those things
day.
bother me,
I had a
but-
legitimate anxiety attack, so much so that I was like, can I call my sister? They like gave me
They
the
didn't give you a
phone.
Valium or something?
I should have. I never knew I was gonna react that way, but it's really not fun, and that sounds horrifying.
Yeah. So it was my experience like that of a soldier. Sure. Great. No, but it's fine. It's like actually healing up pretty well. A couple days in.
It's good. Can you get back to trainings pretty soon?
Yeah, I can train now.
Oh,
I just
yeah.
I can't use my left hand until
Oh my gosh, that stinks.
for like 10 days. So it's not that bad. It could be worse.
I had a funny moment. I had to have like a minor surgical procedure on my scalp, and the doctor. I was like, "Oh, wait, when can I get back to doing athletics and stuff like that?" And he was like, "Well, you could pretty much do anything after a week or something like that." He's like, unless of course you're like a cage fighter or something like that. And I was like, "Oh no, I am." He's like laughing it up, and then I'm like, "No, really?" And he could not, like, you don't expect doctors to laugh, like they giggle, but he started cracking up because it was legitimately funny to him. Like, oh, granted, I am not a cage fighter. Like, I train.
You combat sports.
I combat sports, but it was just funny. I couldn't resist saying it, and he could not stop laughing. He was cracking up, and I saw him, later at some point on the street, and he was still laughing. So that was a funny moment. He wasn't expecting that. But.
Yeah.
So, but good, you can get back to training.
Yeah, and I'm looking for apartments, and that's been annoying, as it is.
That's probably worse than the cut.
Yeah, they catch you. They try to catch you. It's like you just realize, like, in pictures how things are just kind of misrepresented. Like, they and then they do the whole the what is it called, the net effective rent. Have you dealt with that before? So, like, basically, it'll say like the rent is let's say $2,600 a month or something, and so you're like, okay, if we're looking for a 3-bedroom in a decent part of New York, so like, or it's let's say that's the rent we're looking for, right? But then when you go there, like, okay, well, it's actually like $3,000. It's just that you're gonna get 1 month free. So the actual rent is the effective rent is $2,600, but the rent is really $3,000, which is like, okay, whatever. Over the course of a year lease, you're still only paying the $2,600 or $2,700. But the problem is that when you go for renewal, which I don't want to renew, I'm not going to move out in a year. You're renewing from that higher number. You're not renewing from the $2,600 that you thought you were renting at. So that part's just a little bit annoying, and just a bunch of bait and switches. You call looking at one place like, oh, I don't have that place anymore, but I got this place.
You call up, they're like, oh, we just got rid of that place.
Yeah,
it's kind of like whenever you call up the pizza place to see where your pizza is, they always say, oh yeah, it just left.
Or like we're getting
how ironic.
So we're getting like a hard sell now on a couple places where we like them, but there's some things wrong, so we're still looking. And one person, and it's like early on, it was in a good apartment, and the person was like, yeah, well, you got to do it soon because I have a lot of people that want this place, but I like you guys. So I was like, okay. But then a couple days later, I got another text. I'm like, if you're trying to rent apartments, like, you don't care who rents it. You're just trying to get your fee. So this is sketchy. And then,
look, you want to rent someone who's somewhat.
But like, don't tell that person, don't push that person. Like, don't be like, hey, we got people right away. I'm ready to, So finally I sent an email like, hey, look, I really appreciate your patience. We need more time. Like, there are a couple, things we don't love about the place, and we'd like to keep looking. And, if it gets rented, that's great. If not, then we can touch base in a week or so. But then I get another email like, I have people I'm waiting for, you're waiting to look at it, but I really like you guys. So what's your answer? And it's like, well, I gave you my answer. Like, we need a week, if you got to rent it. But, we're,
Yeah, that sort of thing annoys me. It actually pushed me out of getting a membership at my local Equinox. I was going to do it. It's expensive, but whatever. It's like I just wanted to. I was in the area for a few months at the time. I was like, all right, why don't I just get a nice membership at Equinox? And I just the sales staff there. I was like, look, I'm here to buy it, and they're like pushing me in ways that really rubbed me the wrong way. It's like, look, clearly I know what a gym is. I know the value of Equinox. I'm here because I want to join, right? You didn't have to go through this whole big sale. Like, they were like, oh, congratulations. And I'm like, congratulations for what? It's like, oh, you just passed the first part of our interview.
What interview?
I'm like, what, that I'm here right now? Like, just talking to you, that's an interview? And it was just like, it just reeked of these procedures that they teach their sales department. Like, go through this, but without realizing one of the most important things with sales is you sell to the customer. So, like, a good salesman will pick up on what the personality of the customer and sell to those qualities. So if you're trying to sell to someone, granted, there are certain sales procedures and certain general theories when it comes to selling, but that's a big thing. You don't sell in a way to someone who that's going to turn, it's going to turn them off. And that's exactly what they did. And just out of spite, I said, I'm not interested anymore, and I left. So yeah, I think with with sort of middling salespeople or brokers or whatnot, they don't realize who they're dealing with, right? That's a big part of it. I guess, Tony, you're not in New York, so you never had to deal with New York City real estate brokers, have you? Is it same up even in the burbs? Is it similar?
Actually, I lived in Brooklyn.
Oh, so you did? Oh, I thought so you know all about it.
It's just in general. I think it's anywhere.
Like she's from the sticks.
Yeah.
No, it changes once you get out of New York. It's way different. Like, the city is the worst.
It's definitely an annoying process, and then I get annoyed with like the things that. The way it looks like on the computer, it never really looks like that in person. I hate that so much. Yeah, well, actually, we found a place we really, really like that kind of did look the way it looked in the on the screen. The only issue, because we actually saw it, like I was looked at a bunch of places, like, so I'm in an area of Queens where they're just
aren't that many apartments available, and a lot of them don't want dogs. So we're having a really hard time finding a good place. So we expanded our look. You know, there are a few things kind of location-wise that we really need. We need to be really close to a train. We need to be quick to the city. But we found that, you know, a couple areas of Brooklyn that actually work really well and are within our price range. But a lot of the apartments are either just not what they appear on the screen, and you can then see when you're there, it's like the way they shot it made it look, you know, it was just so manipulative that like even if I liked the place, I wouldn't want to go because it's like you're just trying to manipulate me. But like the buildings, some of them are just disgusting old rundown buildings, but they renovated the apartment, and you know, or just like some of the neighborhoods, and you know, so we finally found a really nice place that was, you know, fits the bill. It's a little more than we want to spend, but. And it's a little smaller. Like the living area is really big, but the living area is really big, but then the bedrooms are kind of smaller than we want. So now we have to figure out how we're gonna fit a king size bed into the room. So I have to like do some measurements and figure out that it's
we got that way, but that gets filed under, right?
Yeah, first
to the max.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, how are we gonna fit our king size bed?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh my god.
So, but then if we don't, then we got to sell it or get rid of it and then buy another one.
No,
which, hey, I am not rich, so buying a freaking bed is not it's not cheap. Moving is not cheap.
No,
I just bought a bed.
Yeah.
There's a place in the Bronx that's like pretty good. You can get like really good things for like a little cheap, but they're good quality stuff.
Okay.
And they move you into like they'll do it, put it together, all that stuff.
What's the name of the place?
It's kind of like I don't even know if it has a name.
where do they get their?
But it's good stuff.
I might be.
It's like I have a false like it's not a Tempur-Pedic, but it isn't Tempur-Pedic. It's like a little knockoff, but like it's comfortable.
Depending on whether or not we find, I don't know if this might be a tough sell for my wife, but depending on whether or not we can fit this bed in there, I may be contacting you about your connection.
Yeah, I don't even know the address. I just drive there.
But here's your new mattress. Free bed bugs included.
No, it's nice. And then obviously whatever you don't find there, you can like they have catalogs and stuff, and they could order it for you.
Nice.
Do they have the auto shop equivalent? Probably right down the street, right?
What do you mean by auto shop?
Like the special place where you get the car.
No.
At a discount rate.
I don't know. That's funny. No, well, listen. Here's the thing, though. We are at different stages in our lives. Like I'm like one above IKEA. You're probably you're probably like above that. Like you probably no.
We were just looking at IKEA stuff today. So we're firmly implanted. No, no. So I'll say
like more of like what you get when you're not going to be keeping it long term. It's like when I first got my first apartment, I'm not trying to spend a lot of money on a bed. Like all that stuff. You're just trying to get yourself some things until you're more financially stable.
So that's really the issue. I like IKEA is great for that kind of stuff because I've never moved in a situation where like we're gonna be here for long term.
Right.
So and then IKEA also has, it's just easy, it's hackable. Like I can take things and make what I need out of it. So the thing is like we have like our bedroom is actually like really nice furniture, but now we have to figure out what to do with that stuff because like if we can't fit the bed, which because we didn't anticipate this problem of like, so when we moved there, I was like, all right, well, we'll get a really nice bedroom set. And for what it's worth, we were there for at least, we at least had this bedroom set for at least 4 or 5 years. So, it's fine. But, now, it's like, okay, now I got to move all this stuff and it may not fit. We didn't consider like when you're moving in the city, especially outside of like certain areas, like just places are small. So we have to make that work. But a lot of my other stuff is IKEA. I like IKEA stuff. Now, granted, like if I was gonna buy a place, like probably not. But otherwise, like it works for me, and it works. It's functional, I guess. But
will IKEA put things together or no?
No, they won't. But I like doing that. I like
so you're good at that.
Yeah,
I actually will never. I thought I could like be that person, and I did.
I
put together all my stuff like from my first bedroom set in Brooklyn. I did it all by myself, but like that stuff fell apart.
Yeah.
Like I didn't do a good job. I should have just had my dad come over and do it.
And well, that's the other thing. That is the thing with IKEA is like a lot of the stuff is not very movable. So like for example, I have a lot like there's certain those cube kind of bookcases are great and those will move well. But a lot of their other things like we have some furniture from IKEA that we already know it's like all right, that's not coming. I mean, partially because we just have to scale down. Like we're going from a really large apartment to possibly like a much smaller place, so we're gonna have to get rid of a lot of stuff anyway. And a lot of the IKEA stuff is not going to survive a move. So that's another consideration. But so I don't know if you can share your anecdote, but we were talking earlier about value, and I just think it's an interesting thing to share about kind of our services. So we're gonna we've been talking about value anyway. A lot of today.
We always talk about
But,
value. Yep.
You know, it's interesting. Like and we've talked about this on the podcast before. But I guess if you, Justin and Tony, if you want to share too, even if if it's a different anecdote, like how people kind of devalue what we do. Sometimes,
I actually think people devalue almost everything.
Yeah, so yeah, and
nowadays.
it's a large thing. So I feel like a lot of times, like someone will want a deal or they'll want something, and it's not that I think that they've done the mental calculation of, okay, he does this much and he has this education, so I think he's only worth $20 or whatever, but it's just it's interesting that people don't take that like kind of other people's value into consideration, especially when it's a service. You find it more if you're buying something. I guess if it's in a store, if there's a price attached to it, seems to be like a hard thing attached to it, where if it's you getting a service from me, there's this idea that, well, I can always negotiate with you. Like you can't negotiate with the with Best Buy, but
which is actually not true. You
can. Yeah, but
believe it or not, people don't know that you can. In fact, that would seem to be the better option, to negotiate with the companies that can afford to.
Yeah, but you can't negotiate, but they'll, and it happens like often with me. I'm sure it happens with you. I'm sure it happens to you, Tony. Like where people just, you wonder what what's going on in their head, if they just don't value the service, or if it's genuinely like, I can't afford it, but I really want it. Maybe you'll make an exception for me. But have you guys experienced that? Like with the kind of,
all the time.
Is it often, or do you find that like how frequently of every lead you have do you feel they try to kind of negotiate with you or negotiate down your service for both of you guys, since you're both freelancers?
Well, people, I wouldn't say, they don't really negotiate so much, versus they might kind of expect it to be lower, or or even the opposite. Actually, rather recently, I'm getting a lot of people who are really want to work with me, but right off the bat, they're saying, but I don't think I can afford you. And it's kind of a compliment, because it's true. Like they know that they're going to get a valuable service. But at the same time, it's just interesting, because I don't know where their money's going and what they're spending their money on and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, a nutrition program, or like taking music lessons, right? These are things that you learn a skill and they set you up for a lifetime. So there's a return on the investment. It's not an expense. I think a lot of people, I'll get the excuse, so I just don't want to, that's not an expense I want to go do right now. It's like, it's really not an expense. An expense is something like a car. A car depreciates in value the second you start to drive it. You're never going to get back what you put into it. You spend it, you use it, it's useful to you, but it really, there's nothing that's coming back to you, versus spending money on something.
You mean financially coming back?
Financially coming back,
yeah. Of course, usage, what is a different thing. But you mean like you're going to try to resell the car or something
right,
like that.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, that's money that's going away. I actually had somebody who was very honest and told me that they didn't have the money to work with me because they just got a Mercedes and their car payment was like some crazy amount. I can't remember the exact number, like $400 or $500 a month or something. And it's like, okay, whatever. My programs are around that amount, right, per month. So it's kind of just like, okay, so you'll spend that money on a car, but you won't spend that money on your health, right? And it's a lease vehicle.
Yeah.
Like you're not, it just doesn't add up.
Which brings about a different concept of value of what other people feel is important when it comes to value.
So now, I guess a question.
So what were we gonna say?
So my question would be then, as a service. So I always feel like I'm not a salesman. I don't want to sell you on personal training. So when we talk, I am selling you, but I don't want it to come across that way. So I tend to be more reserved in my approach, and I kind of share what I can do, how things will work, but I kind of stop there. I try not to do the hard sell, or for a number of reasons. I think one is I don't think I'm good at it. Two, I don't like it. I don't want to come across. There's a bit of being self-conscious as well, and being kind of found out or exposed. But is that then a fault in us as service providers, that we're not
150%
explaining to the person why there's value in what we do versus maybe I think getting a car? But then how do you do that without coming across as just trying to sell them?
So it's definitely two layers to that. So part of it is our fault, because you have a solution, right, Ryan? What you do is so important and so helpful. So you can call it sales or you can call it providing a service. Either way, you're helping someone have more energy, be more present with their children, prevent things like high cholesterol, high blood pressure. You're getting them to be more active. Like, you really are helping them. They feel like crap, and because they start getting in a normal exercise regimen, feeling confident about themselves, that's amazing what you do. And so by you either not explaining that enough or not trying to sell them or trying to get them signed up, you're basically not getting them to a point where you can change their life. Mm-hmm. So part of it is on you, and same thing with me. Sometimes I find like I don't explain it. Maybe I don't explain it well enough. I don't really get them to understand that this is important. But then the other side of it too is like there's either whether it's fear or not really, maybe they don't really want to change, or maybe there really is no value in health, or maybe they really don't see that. A lot of times people think like, okay, I need to get my finances together and then I'll invest in something like nutrition or fitness and stuff like that. Not recognizing that if they did it sooner, they would save a lot of time, money, and probably get out of debt a lot faster. But that's a whole other conversation. But so I think it's definitely both parts. I think a lot of it is our own responsibility, probably not doing a great enough job explaining the program and being confident enough to know that we can help them. But then the other part is this person just might not quite really get it, or maybe doesn't want to change, or has fear of changing.
An interesting thing that I've learned from sort of having my own business and being, my own independent contractor and everything like that, is not to negotiate that much. I'm up to negotiations within reasons. Like if someone is going to say, look, this is what I can afford, then I might make an agreement saying, okay, so if you do it on this time when it's convenient for me to do it, where I'm not losing money doing it, and if we work on this schedule and we sign, something like that where it works, then to me that's reasonable. For me, the problem that I've gotten into in the past is sort of these back and forth negotiations where someone wants it for less money, then they want it at a different time, then they want to do this, and they want to do that, right? One thing I've learned is just to not deal with those people, right? Yeah. And once you are further on in your career, you don't have to deal. Like when you're sort of coming up, you're starting something new, you kind of have to take on almost everything because you need to build up a client list, you need experience, you need money, you need all these sorts of things. And so you have to sort of take a lot of the, eating crow type of jobs where you're dealing, constantly hunting people down. Sometimes you're hunting people down for money that they owe you. Right, which is a big pet peeve of mine, where someone makes it seem like they're doing you a favor by paying you for a service that you've given them. Have you ever experienced that, Ryan, where like someone will owe you and then like it's sort of a little pulling teeth to get them to finally pay you, right? And they just don't want to do it, or they're avoiding you. They're like, all right, I'll pay you, right? And finally you get them to do it, and then they sort of act in a way like they're doing you a favor by paying you. Like that's a pet peeve of mine when people act that way. So if you're paying for a service, please don't do that, right? It's a way to, it spreads bad vibes. And this is really a way to annoy the person who's providing you with the service. Yeah. So then eventually we sort of learn to just not deal with those people, because as much as we want to help people and we want to provide the service we provide, we love doing it. If there are some people that are just, for whatever reason, not willing to do it, not willing to commit to it, not willing to pay for it, or a combination of everything. So I know it's just part of the game, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like, all right, I'm going to share one more thing, and then we can move on, whatever we have going on today.
I wonder if people enjoy hearing us rant.
Yeah, I don't know.
Please let us know if you like hearing us rant. Because I feel we've been ranting a lot.
Yeah. But I shared this with you guys before, and I really think it's very interesting. And so I just, on my podcast, Tips with Tony, I have an interview with one of my clients. And his name's Raphael, and he's really, really awesome. And I actually worked with him last year when I worked for my other job. And the other job that I worked at, it was a basically they paid me a salary and I provide free nutrition services for those who came in there. But my counseling, my responsibilities there were more than just counseling. I had a lot going on, so I couldn't have like weekly appointments with a person. It would be really difficult. When someone has to travel to a location, they might not come in as frequently, whether it's like work meetings or weather. Things kind of happen. So when we were working together, like he would be successful and then he'd kind of stop coming in and then fall off track and go back on. And, the thing is to be honest, when I have a lot of other responsibilities and I had a lot of clients. It's a free service. I don't get it sounds crazy. My compensation doesn't change no matter how many times you see me or don't. So in that setting, I'm not like one to be on top of everyone. Like come in. It's a free service. You take advantage of it or you don't. Anyways, fast forward to now, I had left that position and he really was still interested in working with me, and he knew that he had stopped coming to see me at that location and his weight went up to almost 400 pounds. And I told him, I said, listen, like there's somebody else you can go see there. But honestly, I think I know you well at this point. I think what you need is the most successful you've been is when we would see each other more frequently. You kind of at this point know what to do. You need the accountability. So you need someone to check in with every single week. You need someone to be able to communicate with you in between calls. This is what's going to really help you. And when I presented him the prices, he was just like, I really don't know how I'm going to make this work. I know that I want to make it work. So regardless, I said, look at your finances, find it, cut back on things, whatever you have to do, make this work for you. He's committed. It's been maybe not even 2 months. He's down 40 pounds. He's killing it. I know for a fact that his habits are changed. He feels better. And honestly, nothing really changed other than the fact that he paid attention. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what a lot of people kind of miss is if you don't put your money towards the things that you value, and if you expect to change without putting any sort of, there's nothing, if you had to spend like $10 a month, like, Planet Fitness is a good example. How many people listening to this probably just have that automatically coming out of their bank account and they never actually go to the gym? Yeah. Right? But if you had to pay something for like lifetime, you're paying $150, $160, however much of it is a month, you're probably going to get there, right? You're going to show up because it's something that is, you don't want it to kind of just to be a waste. So, I just wanted to share that because I felt like it was important. If we're talking about value, sometimes too, paying helps you to work harder. It puts like an effort forward.
That there's probably a good chance that you've saved him. I don't know if you saved him because he's still net paying something, but you probably helped him to cut back on certain expenses. Like if he was, buying a couple of expensive coffees, maybe different sorts of foods that are unhealthy, and he was spending money on it extra. Yeah. So, right, you probably helped him with that as well.
Absolutely. I mean, when you think about, one example of that is, he kind of was that a lot of people do this where they don't really eat all day and then they overeat at night. And they usually order something not great. And, that's kind of normal and what people do. And so you end up, you don't realize it, but throughout the day, you're not eating breakfast. Then you pick up, say, a Snickers bar or a chocolate bar or something like that. You're paying for that. You're paying for a coffee. You're paying for a tea, whatever it is. And then you order, say, pizza or Chinese food or whatever that is. You're spending money on food every single day that's not providing your body any sort of like nutrition or return. And then obviously you're going to just stay in that cycle versus buying food, cooking it, preparing it, planning ahead, knowing that you like certain like maybe protein bars or granola bars or nuts and seeds or whatever, and then buying them in bulk on Amazon. Like there's so many ways to go about saving your day-to-day finances. But then also just, if you think about it, to be at 400 pounds, to continue on that route, it's honestly like the likelihood of him developing diabetes, high blood pressure, having to spend medication. Some diabetes medications is like $500 a month. Like that would have happened sooner rather than later. And now he won't have to worry about that.
It's hard. That sort of goes to the almost a little bit to the future self episode, which is a really good one if you guys haven't listened to it. It's the concept of putting things on your future self. I'm going to get healthy in the future. Well, this sort of is by being very unhealthy in the present is putting a tremendous tax financially, health-wise, happiness-wise on your future self, right? Anything from having to spend on medications, or maybe having to spend more on insurance premiums, having to pay a lot of money in car fare going back and forth from the hospital, like things that people don't even think about, expenses that will come up that are due to their health.
Yeah.
Right. So, and it's an investment, right? As you mentioned, it's an investment. And I always say, every time you work out, every healthy meal that you eat is like putting money in the health bank.
Yeah.
So for later in life when you're going to need it.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely.
All right, so sort of part 2 of our discussion that we'll definitely release them consecutively. The last one was the health halos, where foods that were often considered healthy may not be as healthy as the perception of them are. Now, today we're going to do the opposite. We're going to do the health pitchfork, right? So I know, imagine the little angel on one shoulder and the devil on the other. I couldn't think of anything else that was the opposite of a halo. So like the pitchfork, the devil's pitchfork was the closest thing I could think of.
Nose, but
huh?
A little on the nose for you.
All right.
Cleverer than that.
Well, I look, it was just, who knows? But all right, so today we're going to discuss foods that often get a bad rap, but are not necessarily all that unhealthy for you.
Yeah.
Now, of course, as we know, a lot of it is based on context of how you're eating the foods. But yes, so these are foods that are not necessarily as bad as they might be perceived as.
All right.
So what's the first one on?
Well, the first one I've got on the list, and then obviously this is Tony will be giving most of the information on these. I've got eggs on the list.
So I think we've probably spoken about this like 1,000 times before. A lot of people avoid eggs because the yolk has a lot of cholesterol, and so there's this concept that and it used to say, like, studies showed that like we believed that consuming excess cholesterol raised cholesterol in the body, but more and more studies are starting to show that it's more about things like trans fat and possibly even sugars and just not a great diet overall, or lack of dietary fiber.
Genetics too.
So there's so many other factors, and actually it's not the cholesterol in food that actually raises cholesterol in the body. So when people avoid eggs, there is really no need to. I will say if you're someone who's trying to like get your protein up and keep your fats low, then you might want to that's when you might do like just egg whites and just do 1 or 2 eggs, depending like if you're tracking, but there's really no reason to not eat eggs. If you want to.
Well, I don't know if you'll remember this, Tone, but in the 1990s, I
was born in 1990.
So yeah, you probably, I don't know if, look, you were around then, but I don't know if these are something that you would have picked up on. There
it was anywhere from 0 to 9.
0 to 9.
I don't know.
Yeah. But in the 1990s, there was the popular food, especially for the first half, and then before carbs became the enemy, fat was the enemy.
Oh, yeah.
It was all about fat. So eggs are somewhat high in fat, right, and cholesterol.
Yep.
So they became the
cholesterol
enemy.
gets stored in fat, so so one doesn't come without the other.
Yeah, no, sure.
Yeah.
So, and of course, with it came all the fat-free cookies, which, as we all know, are probably one of the worst things that you can eat, packed with, tons of sugar and chemicals and all sorts of awful stuff.
Well, that's how hydrogenated oils came about.
Yes. And it's funny because even then, I always knew with eggs, I was like, really? This is an unhealthy food? Yet you're selling me something that was made, in a lab with all sorts of crap in it, and you're telling me that this is okay to eat? I always knew it was funky. But all right, so not just being unhealthy, but our eggs are healthy, right?
Yeah,
they're definitely a really good thing to eat.
So the yolk itself is a great source of vitamin D and vitamin B12. Which is obviously really important to consume. Actually, we were going to do a separate podcast on this because I want to do a little bit more research. But about 40 to 45% of Americans are actually vitamin D deficient, and the yolk is a great source of that. Vitamin B12 is really important, especially if you are doing sort of like a vegetarian/vegan or like plant-based sort of diet, like incorporating the egg yolk, and if you are consuming eggs, would be a good source of vitamin B12. If maybe you don't do like things like chicken, fish, and beef and stuff like that.
Well, the other issue with eggs, as it does with almost anything animal-based or non-organic, is these concepts of hormones and antibiotics and stuff like that. As far as you know, what is is there any effect? I know that this opens a floodgate that's enormous.
Yeah,
but
that might be beyond the scope of this
I'm just
episode.
curious of very briefly, do we know any, like, from what you know?
There's no hard facts or science or anything that's showing that their hormones in certain eggs are going to be higher than others, and that's going to affect your overall health.
Okay, well, we could maybe have a discussion about that another time.
Yeah, I would definitely. Actually,
Ryan's like, let's
that's
steer
just, like,
way
that's
clear
like a
this
whole
one
other
right
topic. But we could
Yeah.
we could go into that in
We
another
should.
time.
We definitely should.
Yeah.
So similar to eggs, other foods that may be high in cholesterol, like shrimp or organ meat, like chicken liver, also have a similar rap for being unhealthy or high in cholesterol. Like, I actually heard that livers were really nutritious. Like, they have good stuff in there. You know, they might be high in cholesterol, but there was like iron and other potentially very nutritious elements to those foods. So what about some of those as well, like shrimp, organ meat?
Yeah. So organ meat, I'd have to double check, but I think you're right. I'm pretty sure the great source of it is iron. I want to say magnesium, but I could completely be making that up. I'd have to look it up for sure. So from a nutrition standpoint, it's gonna be nutritious. I just don't eat liver, but if people wanted to, it's fine. Same thing with, and then shrimp is gonna be a lot leaner. So although it has cholesterol, it's very low in fat, so it's actually a great source of protein. I will say with any sorts of meat, it's really about your cooking method. So if you fry anything, that's how we're going to get more. That could potentially raise your cholesterol, consuming a lot of fried foods. What are you cooking it with? Like, is it loads of like cheese and butter and like sauces, or is it more just like, like garlic and olive oil and grilled or baked or broiled? Those are going to be definitely better ways of cooking to make that a healthier option.
Ryan, you can't eat shrimp, right?
Nope.
Why
Can you eat any
are you
shrimp?
allergic?
Yeah.
Oh.
All right. So what else do we have on the list?
All right. So this one is interesting for me. I'm interested to hear. Tofu. So typically I've thought of tofu as being considered healthy, but maybe I'm out of the loop on it.
So basically what I get a lot of people will say to me is they don't eat. Maybe we should just say soy in general.
Yes. Okay. Maybe that's fair. Yeah. Soy.
So like that soy has estrogen, so it will put someone at risk for breast cancer. Or men, oh my gosh, so many men will tell me that I don't eat any soy products because it'll give me man boobs. And so here's the thing. There's soy like in the whole form from like a soybean, like edamame. Then there's tofu, which is like slightly processed but not so much. It's usually fortified with things like calcium and vitamin D, which is good. And then there's like soy lecithin, which is added as a preservative. And so obviously when something's like, it's going to be in some of your foods, but if most of your foods are packaged, like that's when you don't want to have that sort of soy. But in general, like if you are someone who has a history of breast cancer and you have the BRCA1 gene, I would understand not wanting to eat something that has estrogen that could possibly feed that. However, it really is unclear right now. So I don't want to say yes or no. If someone doesn't feel comfortable consuming that and they have a history of breast cancer and that runs in their family, then they, if they want to avoid it, I'm all for it. There's other studies that are showing that actually consuming things like tofu, soy milk, so edamame, like the soy in a more whole form, actually can prevent a lot of different forms of cancer, probably because it is plant-based and because it has dietary fiber. And even showing that people who are postmenopausal may benefit from having a little bit of that estrogen. It's not like an excessive amount. It's not like you're taking any sort of, if you're just having, a half a block of tofu, or you guys know I eat like a full block of tofu sometimes, like I'll just like eat it, whatever. Like then, and the rest of your diet's balanced, and it's really not something that's going to be detrimental to your health.
All right. So next I have on the list potatoes.
Potatoes. So I think because it's a starch, maybe that's why people think that it's not good for them.
Well, what's also probably the most popular method of consuming potatoes in this country.
Well,
in the United States.
if you're eating French fries, then it's not going to be good for you. But an actual like a baked potato, I recommend that a lot to a lot of my clients because the fiber, the potassium, it's wholesome, it's simple. So it's actually, and especially if you're working out, it's like a great thing to consume. A lot of people I know will do like sweet potatoes instead. So sweet potatoes are going to have more vitamin A. They won't have as much as potassium, but they're still a good source of potassium. They have a little bit more fiber.
So,
but yeah, I mean, there's so many different varieties of potatoes. It really goes down to like if you're frying it, obviously not going to be that great for you, but you're leaving it whole in the whole form, baking it, keeping the skin on. That's really important for the fiber. It's a really excellent source of potassium and other nutrients as well.
So let's say like a nice big Idaho potato. How many calories is in that?
I would have to do the math. I think it's like 130. I'd have to.
All right, so it's not
size.
So even if it's 200 calories, right?
That would probably be a large.
That's in it, even for large. That's getting a lot of bang for your 200 calories because
right,
that is a filling.
It's all about quality
right?
of calories over, quality over quantity.
So really, potatoes is in almost a strangely low calorie food. I don't know if you'd say low calorie, but not high calorie as people might think it is.
Yeah, so a small baked potato has about 130 calories, while a large baked potato up to 4 inches in diameter can have about 275 calories. And I think that, and I literally just looked that up, so I don't even know if it's a reliable resource, but off the top of my head, that sounds about right. Which makes sense because about an ounce of starch is equivalent to like 80 calories. So that makes sense. But like anything, it's how you cook it and what are you putting on the baked potato, right? Are you putting cheese and bacon and lots of butter? Or you do, what I love to do? I'd love to do Greek yogurt instead of sour cream. It's a great alternative, actually. But yeah, so potatoes are completely fine to consume. Like anything, it's all about portions and balance and your cooking methods. But yeah, it has this bad reputation. But honestly, they're great.
Cool. So next on the list, bananas. Which I love bananas, and I've
but they have so much
lately.
sugar.
Yeah.
Ryan, how can you eat bananas when they have so much sugar? No, so yeah, honestly,
people have actually said that same tone.
No, but so the thing is why bananas have a bad reputation is because they just tend to be a lot larger. So yes, they have a lot of natural sugar because a banana is usually like equivalent to 2 servings of fruit because it's larger in size. So if you had a half of a banana and a medium-sized apple, they're going to have the same amount of carbohydrates and the same amount of sugar. The reason why bananas have so much sugar is because they're just bigger. So that's the only, and they're a great source of potassium as well. So they're important, you definitely, and it's a natural source of sugar. Great, have as a snack within your work, like after a workout. So there's
They're actually great to cook with too. Like for people that are vegan, it's a binding agent. So that people who might not want to use eggs for something. Of course, bananas, you can't really have a smoothie without a banana because that's what binds everything together.
It makes it so good.
But bananas are plain nice. And what about similar like plantain type things? I know that we all think of plantains as fried and this one way or another, but theoretically, those could be nice and healthy as well, right?
Right. So, but it's all about the cooking method, right? So if you do fried plantains versus I've actually baked them before. It tastes much better. And plantains are very large. So that's the thing too. Yeah. It's more about, it comes back to the portion.
All right. So the next one I have is, I guess we'll combine it, milk and dairy. So, obviously skim milk has been hugely popular, and a long time ago, I kind of realized not a big deal. Why am I not just drinking whole milk, and it tastes better? And from what I understand, it's not unhealthy. So why don't you maybe if you can explain why it's not as bad as people think it is?
Okay. Well, I feel like that's like 2 questions because so let me just explain how in general consuming milk is a great source of calcium and vitamin D, right? If you have an intolerance or sensitivity, obviously you don't want to consume it. But milk in general from a cow is going to be an excellent source of calcium. Vitamin D has a good amount of carbohydrates and a good source of protein, and it is very nutritious. The reason why it's been recommended to do like low fat or skim is because of that saturated fat that can also carries more calories, and potentially what we have perceived could put someone at risk for developing high cholesterol. More and more studies are coming out. We're really learning that it's more about your overall lifestyle, lack of dietary fiber, having full fat milk versus skim milk, not going to be much of a difference. However, it really all comes down, I think, to satiety. So if you have 1 cup of whole milk and it actually cuts your cravings and you feel full and you're more satisfied with that, versus when you have skim milk, you find that like you're still hungry after, maybe because it doesn't have the fat, then you might be better off having like a cup of milk. In general, they're all relatively nutritious for you. And so there's no reason to exclude it other than if you have like an intolerance or an allergy.
And I think that dairy in general has come under fire for similar reasons that that we talked to with eggs, hormones, and anything from the way that the milk is procured as well, which is once again a completely different story.
Yeah.
But I think that dairy has certainly come under attack. There's a lot of people that claim that adults shouldn't drink dairy, or that really anyone shouldn't drink dairy, that we're the only species that that drinks another animal's milk. Mm-hmm. So that's the idea. It comes under fire. But so do you have a little spiel about that?
I would just say that everything, we're always learning, we're always growing, and the reason why milk came out was because it was recognized that people were deficient in things like calcium, vitamin D, and it was the easiest way to get it. So there was a purpose for it at one point. We may, as we do more research, as we go on, we might learn that there's no longer a purpose for it. But at the end of the day, it's not hurting anybody by consuming it unless they're consuming large quantities and they have, like I said, an intolerance or sensitivity. But in general, like there's never, that's why I feel like I might be a little bit redundant, but there's really not one food, and I've said this before and I'll say it again, there's not one food that makes or breaks the diet. It really is the overall diet of what someone's consuming, how much of it, the other factors in their lifestyle. That's really going to be that's really going to determine if something's quote unquote healthy or not.
What about the thought that dairy causes inflammation?
So there are some studies to support that. If you have like skin irritation, stomach problems, then you might benefit from going out without the dairy a little bit. But then there also might not be a reason to exclude it. Like if you eliminate from your diet and you notice that nothing changes about maybe your skin or your stomach, then there's really no reason to remove it. It's definitely a person to person case.
Okay,
great. So the next thing I have red meat.
Yeah. So a lot of people will avoid red meat, and it's usually the first step towards healthier eating. They'll usually say, I'm only going to eat chicken and fish and turkey. I'm going to stop eating red meat. Well, here's the thing. If you're eating like burgers and sausage and bacon and you cut that out and replace it with things like chicken and fish and turkey, then yes, that's a great option. But it's not necessarily the meat that's the red meat itself that's actually causing damage to, say, your arteries or your overall health. It's more or less, once again, cooking methods. That's really important. Quality of the beef. So if it's highly processed, and it's the ground beef that's like 83% lean, that's not really lean, that's mostly fat, and that's not going to be beneficial, versus like a sirloin steak and you put it on the barbecue. That's a great source of iron, vitamin B12. It's also something different. Like it's not just chicken or fish. It's something that provides variety on the plate. Well. Obviously, I guess this is true. I should assume. But yes, obviously a great source of protein. But yeah, and I think we talked about it last time on the other episode about like things like turkey bacon and stuff like that. Processed meat in general, it ends up being mostly fat and very little protein, versus like a nice piece cut of steak is going to be mostly protein. And if you can actually trim the visible fat, that white part, that marbling, you cut part of that off, then you're actually going to be able to remove some of the fat. But in ground meats, processed meats, sausage, stuff like, you can't take that out. It's there, right? It's also, they usually add a ton of salt to it. But when you cook, you can get a fresh cut of beef and you grill it It's totally nutritious.
I always thought that was funny when people who were trying to become healthier were like, okay, I'm going to cut out red meat, as if that was the problem. But the dinner that they might have eaten was a bacon cheeseburger with French fries and a Coke or something like that. And I'm like thinking, it seems to me out of everything, the meat is probably the least unhealthy out of everything in that meal. Besides maybe the lettuce that's on the burger, right?
Well, and then what also people fail to do is they forget that, like, if you're going to remove, and this is what happens too when people go vegetarian, like, if you're going to remove meat from the plate, it's not because meat's bad for you. It's because now you have an opportunity to replace it with something nutritious. But if you just cut it out and don't add anything healthy back in, you're really not changing much. You're not really doing much to change your health or the outcomes of your health. So if you are someone who is cutting out, like, beef, then you want to maybe then just, yes, if you're doing like chicken or fish or turkey, those are better, leaner cuts. But also don't forget about the vegetables, you know? Don't forget about things like adding, like snacking on nuts or whatever it is. Like, add nutritious sources of food back in if you're going to cut out one whole food item, I guess you could call it.
Cool. So now the next thing we have on our list is, pork.
Okay, this is a good one. So pork tenderloin is it's very similar. Like, so the white meats we were just talking about are nice and lean. So anything that's like chicken breast, turkey breast, things like tilapia, like fish in general, but you know, salmon's gonna have healthy fat, but it's gonna have more fat than say like a tilapia or like a shrimp. So those white meats, something like a pork tenderloin, naturally is gonna have less fat than the beef. So this might sound a little bit contradictive to what I just said, but it is still a healthy alternative because it is a white part of the meat. And once again, it's about cooking methods. Baking, grilling, broiling, not frying. That's going to be a better option. But pork in bacon form or sausage form,
which is how it's mostly eaten.
So in that situation, we probably wouldn't want to have too much.
When people think pork, you think bacon, you think sausage, you think stuff like that. You don't think pork tenderloin or pork shoulder or something that's a lot harder to prepare. And, right?
Exactly. So, exactly.
You know, even like a pork chop can be. I guess that's anything, right? Pork chop is anything.
Right?
I remember eating something. That's like, this is very lean.
Yeah.
How much fat? You know,
it's pretty dry. Like it's not. You know. It's not the most tastiest, but I eat pork's like pretty standard for me in my diet. It's a nice lean cut and change it up when I get tired of chicken.
My only issue with pork is philosophical now.
Yeah, that's why I don't really eat it.
Well, some people don't.
Smart.
Yeah, and also
they're cute and
same
smart.
thing with cows.
I know it's totally arbitrary, but it's just that's
chickens aren't as cool as cows or pigs. So, you know, that's the hard part.
My friend was trying to convince me during the time when I was vegetarian. He's like, "Have you ever seen a bunch of chickens? Those are some mean mother effers, right? They will straight up kill each other. So I have no problem eating chicken. Those are some violent cocks right there." I was like, all right, you know, I guess so. I'll probably get flamed for that, but I didn't say it.
All right. Well, how about so now we got frozen vegetables.
Oh yeah, people like all the time they tell me that they don't eat frozen vegetables because they think they're not good for them. I love frozen vegetables. The only problem I have with frozen vegetables is usually the flavor and the texture isn't as good as fresh. But from a nutrition standpoint, sometimes frozen vegetables actually have more nutrition than the stuff that you get on the shelf. Because you think about it, say you get that's a bad example, broccoli that comes from California, right? By the time it gets onto the truck, and we live in New York, so I should preface that. So you're getting from one side of the country to the other. By the time you pick it, it gets to you, put out. By the time you purchase it, put it on your counter, then prepare it. Every time it's exposed to that air, it's losing some sort of nutrition. Still very nutritious. You still want to eat your vegetables. However, when you have frozen vegetables, they're picked and then frozen right away. So the nutrition quality is at its peak in that situation. So frozen vegetables, there's nothing wrong with them. You definitely just want to be mindful of things like sauces and gravies. So if you are getting frozen broccoli, the ingredients should just be broccoli.
And isn't a lot of produce, unless it's local and just from the farm, you know, a few miles away, isn't a lot of it frozen anyway? Like produce like flash frozen. right?
I don't know about
That's
that.
what I heard. Like a lot of produce, right? If it's going to travel, right, they flash freeze it.
I mean, if that
So
would
a lot of fresh
I actually
produce might be
don't know. I'd
frozen
have to-
anyway.
It might be.
Don't quote me on that but so a lot of people have told me that.
No, you said it with some authority initially. Now you're backing.
Well, okay. So I mean,
No, I'm just messing with you.
we'll think about it. Like if broccoli is procured
though, 'cause
in
it would-
California, or
I don't
you're
think so because I think they would change the flavor of the vegetable.
well, I know how we can get some insight into this.
A
Are you
Google
going to go
search
to Google
mid,
because
mid
Google
podcast.
is probably
You don't
not.
want to hit pause first at
No,
least.
I want to do this live.
So that people. All right. Well, while he's doing a search, how about coffee?
Oh, we just talked about coffee.
We did-
So the reason
yeah.
why I'm trying, no, I mean, in
Yeah,
the
that's
sense of,
right.
like,
That's true.
before.
Yeah, we did talk
So
about
I'm
coffee.
trying to decrease my caffeine intake because I've hit a tolerance. But the coffee bean itself is actually very good for you. If you have like heartburn, then probably not because it would just the acid would probably will bother it more. But the coffee beans, there's really high in antioxidants. Having a little bit of caffeine, there's actually a lot of benefits to it. We actually have I think we have a whole podcast about it. So definitely go back and listen to it. I don't know if it's a podcast about caffeine or coffee.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
Know. Forget. But yeah, we did.
But yeah, so with coffee, it's usually an amount that you're consuming. So for me, I noticed I was having way too much, and my skin was getting a mess because I also wasn't drinking enough water. So for me, I needed to cut back. I was at a tolerance where I was probably having like 4 or 5 cups a day, but it wasn't doing anything. Like nothing. I wasn't getting any sort of. The reason why you drink coffee is usually you get a pick me up. It wasn't happening. So I obviously knew I needed to slow down a bit. But in general, it's more about what you put in your coffee. So if you have like the syrups from Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts, or you add sugar, or like your coffee's like mostly cream and milk and very little caffeine, like very little coffee itself, then those are things that you really want to pay attention to more so than the actual coffee. So there's really nothing wrong with it to have it. But you probably, if you have a lot of anxiety, I would say the caffeine you would probably want to avoid, because it probably would just make you feel a little anxious. And some people are more sensitive than others. Like some people, they have 1 cup and they're like shaking, whereas like me, it takes. I don't even know why Starbucks does nothing to me anymore, and that's some serious amount of caffeine.
That's part of their that was probably part of their sales plan. Let's get everyone in the United States addicted to caffeine by serving coffee that's like extra strong, so now they can only come to us.
So it's kind of working.
Oh, by the way, and all I could find in a very fast search was the debate of fresh versus frozen.
Yeah, I don't think things get flat.
Yeah.
Because
one
it
thing
would
about some
change the
produce.
quality of the food. Because every time you freeze something and then you defrost it and then you refreeze it, you're putting yourself at risk for foodborne illness. I don't think food companies would do that.
So I think I've heard something similar, but I think it's a different context. Like it's not
Okay.
I think I've heard something about things being flash frozen or something, but I don't think it's your standard like produce. I think there's something that you read somewhere that you just brought up, which is why we be careful when we make.
About that, what about while we're on the subject of frozen? Well, back to the subject. What about like canned?
That's exactly what I was gonna say, actually. Yeah, so I want to talk about that because it's very similar. Things that like if you do like canned green beans, they've been picked and canned, and the canning process actually helps preserve things and keep them fresh, so the nutrition's high there. The only thing with that is they very often will add a preservative or something to keep the shelf life up. So in the ingredients should just be green beans. You want to make sure it says like no salt added. You want to make sure there's no other words there that you can't pronounce, and that's actually really great especially for people who are on a budget, or if you didn't like what I do. Going back to both the frozen and canned vegetables, I make sure they're always in my pantry or in my freezer because 2 things. One, sometimes I just don't feel like cutting up cooking vegetables, and it's just easier to just throw in a microwavable bag of cauliflower and just like put it on for 5 minutes, and then I have my vegetables to add to my dinner. That's really great and convenient. And then the other part too is like sometimes you buy some produce and it kind of only lasts you for maybe a few days, or like maybe and now it's Thursday or Friday, and you didn't get a chance to get more from the grocery store, and you can't get a chance to go back. So now you still have vegetables to put on your plate, because any sort of vegetable is going to be better than no vegetable.
Sure. Oh, and about that, you can freeze your produce, right?
If you buy it fresh,
I'm not going to eat this. You can.
But I recommend that if you are going to buy your produce and freeze it, try to freeze it sooner rather than later, because otherwise the quality is probably just not going to be great.
Cool. All right, and then the next one we have is, so we have 2 more. I know you're on a time crunch, so we'll do.
We're doing good though. I think if we're almost wrapping up, we're good.
Yeah. Well, Justin skipped the interesting studies, so I'm like, we'll decide.
It was pretty long.
Yeah, maybe we'll do it next week.
Next time.
Yeah, that saves me some research.
Was the study made with a 12-person study?
No, actually, one
that inferred that eating one diet that was high in vegetables and in lean proteins was healthier than one that was very high in sugar and trans fat.
Yes,
that was what the study was.
No,
right?
One involved 6.1 million people.
Okay,
and the other one involved like 130 people. So.
Okay, all right.
Regardless, the next one is seltzer. Hey, well, at least I don't throw out random anecdotes from articles I read like 6 months ago, where you find one small portion you barely remember, and then state it as fact.
It was like that great moment of it was like that great moment in Family Guy where Peter's like, "Oh, I read something," and Brian was like, "You sure it was a book? You sure it wasn't nothing?"
All right. So, seltzer.
Just carbonation.
That's actually just reminded me, and I'm actually looking it up right now. Like, I totally, someone had reached out to me to submit what I felt. Oh, it's here. Can we put it in the show notes? I'm featured in an article about it.
Nice.
Okay, I knew that.
The GymWits is becoming more and more spontaneous.
I will get interviewed for these articles all the time and then never hear back from them. Yeah. And like sometimes I remember to like follow up and be like, hey, did that article ever come out? And like sometimes I don't, and I just realized that so here it is. She quoted me exactly, and hopefully it's accurate, because sometimes I do these and they quote me. I'm like, I actually never said that. So that's interesting that you quoted me and it's not what I said. But let's see. I'm gonna read it out loud. So first things first, let's establish what seltzer actually is. Seltzer water is water that's been infused with carbon dioxide under high pressure, which creates the bubbles. Says Tony Marinucci, MSRDN, blah, 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 blah. In simpler terms, seltzer is carbonated water. Therefore, the ingredient should just read carbonated water. If it is a flavored seltzer, then the ingredient should read carbonated water and natural flavor. So there's nothing wrong with seltzer, because it really is just water with carbon dioxide. That's it. So it has the bubbles. If you are someone who has a lot of bloating, stomach irritation, it may aggravate that more. Other than that, I love seltzer water, because sometimes I don't want to just drink water. In the winter right now, my hydration tactics are coffee and water, but really they're coffee and seltzer, but I'm getting better. So the seltzer actually helps me stay hydrated more, because as you guys know, I'm struggling right now to stay hydrated. And so I'll send you the link so you can read more. And then it talks about like club soda. Basically the difference with club soda is it just has a little bit of sodium, but it's so insignificant to what like sodium would be in like other. It's sodium
it's some sort of sodium. It's not just sodium. It's sodium something.
And they also sometimes they also have other minerals like potassium. So basically it's safe to consume. It just might give a different sort of taste. There's really nothing wrong with it. Yeah. I just personally prefer seltzer.
I find this, who knows if there's any truth to this, I find that actually seltzer stays a little fizzier longer. I don't know if there's any, for whatever reason, but whenever I buy club soda, whenever I buy seltzer, it seems like the bottle of seltzer, like I can open it twice and it's still fizzy. While club soda, once you open it once, you have to finish the whole thing or else it loses its fizz. I don't know if there's any truth to that. That's just what I found.
I'm not sure, but I'm reading. I actually never read this article, but I'm also reading another dietitian had said that people who are salt sensitive should be mindful of things. But to be honest, like the sodium content's so insignificant that I wouldn't really be too concerned about it. But I don't know. We'll post it in the show notes so you guys can read that article.
Cool. All right. So last one we have is, and I'm sure this one is very much has like kind of a context asterisk next to it, but bread.
Oh, we missed another one that I know that we had talked about. But let's do the bread one first.
Yeah.
Well, it's the type of bread that matters the most, right? So obviously Wonder Bread is not going to be great, but like whole grain bread is a great option. Whole wheat bread. There's things that you probably want to look out for, like high fructose corn syrup. Once again, words you can't pronounce. Honestly, I would recommend bread is a great, if you're going to do a whole grain bread, actually, I would have either if you're going to make it from scratch or buy it frozen, because that's going to be a quality, like a more high quality sort of bread versus the ones that last on the shelf for a while. You could probably do a little better. They actually tend to have more sodium, and people who are salt sensitive, actually, that's where they have to look, surprisingly, within
How
in
many
their
people
breads
do you
and
know
wraps.
who make their own bread?
Well, I'm a dietitian. I have lots of dietitian friends, so that's kind of a trick question. But how many people do you know that make their own bread? Probably not many. I actually have a few friends that do it.
Very, very few. And when they make bread, it's like a special occasion sort of thing. It's like, oh, let's make our special bread for whatever holiday that we're making it for.
Yeah.
But very few people
I do it for Easter.
Make their own bread on the reg.
Yeah.
So even though it sounds like an awesome idea, but we're not living in Roman times anymore, where like people actually bake their own bread, and harvested their own flour and whatnot.
Well, maybe they should, instead of making their own cakes and pies.
No, it's true. No, well, it's definitely true. So yeah, you mentioned those frozen breads. So what about like those Ezekiel breads and all that? All those sprouted.
So you still want to
grain
check
bread?
the fiber, because they're healthier in the sense that they're less processed, but they may not necessarily have like that 3 to 4 grams of fiber per slice that I usually recommend for
But they
people.
make them look so healthy.
I know. You have to always read. Don't just go by the labels or the package. Don't just go by the package. Read the nutrition facts label.
And what about some of the gluten-free breads?
That's a great question. So that I feel like we may have, did we talk about that on the other one with the health halo? Because being gluten-free, I actually have a high gluten sensitivity. People who follow the gluten-free diet who either have celiac disease or a high gluten sensitivity, then they need a gluten-free bread product so that they don't experience gastrointestinal systems like symptoms like bloating or even like puffy face or inflammation or skin issues and stuff like that. However, unfortunately, gluten-free bread is highly processed, because basically they're removing gluten, which removes the fluffiness of what bread is, so they have to replace it with something else to still make it fluffy and dense, and they usually add a lot of fat or a lot of salt or sugar or hydrogenated oils, and so it actually is not a great alternative. If you are someone who is eating gluten-free because you just think it's healthier, but you don't actually have a gluten sensitivity or intolerance, then I would recommend not doing that. And also notice that it's still a processed food, and we want to always choose whole foods, whether we're gluten-free or not gluten-free.
All right. So the last one is that I'm interested in is white rice and things like that.
Yeah, or like I think a lot of people will say I'm not eating anything white. I hear that a lot too, like when they first started to eat healthy. Honestly, I did that when I was, I think it was like a freshman in college, or even before college. Like before I like really was learning about nutrition, I just knew that I wanted to like live healthier. And I would say, I'm cutting out all white foods. And so with that would be white rice and even potatoes and white bread and white pasta and all of that. And I would only do whole grains. But from what I've learned, and then also just, the truth behind things, is that that's not necessarily true. So something like white rice has its purpose, and it's still, once again, not processed, not a lot of things in it. It's just rice. If you're in like a bulking season or a strength phase and you're trying to build muscle or gain weight, then white rice is a really easy way to do that, especially if you're trying to you're not eating enough carbohydrates, you want to get your carbs up. It's great post-workout, because there's no fiber. So because there's no fiber, it's more easily absorbed, and it's not going to make you feel full. If you're somebody who's trying to lose weight, then brown rice might be a better alternative. But in general, it really, guys, it's like all about portion size, and it's all about like balance on your plate. So yeah, if you have a whole plate of white rice, very little vegetables and very little protein, that's not going to be a great alternative. But rice is fine to consume. You just have to be mindful of how much you have of it.
And as usual, you get the people that will cut out white rice, but then we'll eat cake.
Right,
So-
which doesn't make any sense
I
either.
always found that funny.
Yeah, because they're like trying to decrease their carbs, but then what happens is if you deprive your body of carbohydrates completely, then those cravings for sugar and sweets are gonna come out a lot more, and so it's gonna be a lot harder to resist things like cake.
Cool. So is that it?
I think that's it.
All right.
I think so for now. Can you guys think of any?
Well, I got
other
two
foods
interesting
that could
studies. No.
No,
We'll do it next
I gotta
week.
catch a train.
You're pushing these studies on us.
Yeah, no, I'm not pushing these studies. They're good.
No, I believe you.
They're useful stuff.
No, I know.
Anyway, but no, they're.
I'll be sure to edit them out next week.
Yeah, sure. And then I can always just post it myself.
It's true.
So you lose either way. Well, I guess the listeners lose either. Well, it depends. If they want studies, they don't lose. They don't want studies, then they.
What if the
lose.
listeners were part of the studies?
Might be interesting to have them on. Tell us what the experience was like. So anyway, with that, if you have any feedback, don't send feedback after this episode. Well, or at least the first part and the most recent part. But I think we did a good job, or Tony did a good job with the food.
You know what would be interesting? Can I send you, like quiz that I have, Are You a Healthy Eater?
Yeah.
I feel like if you listen to both episodes and you take that quiz, I'm curious if someone would come out as a healthier eater or not.
Cool. Yeah. So do that.
Yeah, so let me send you that
Yeah.
link.
So we'll post that. Are you a healthy eater? And maybe I'll do on the app. I'll post a picture of my slit hand.
Ew.
So if you want to look at a gross picture instead of
No.
me forcing it on people on Instagram, it'll be on the app. So you just have to go into the app in the bonus content for this episode, and you will find my sliced hand.
Nice.
As usual, all of our stuff is on thegymwits.com. If you haven't, rate us, review us, please. We need all the support and feedback we can get. That helps us with the iTunes algorithms and gets us ranking up there. So please help us out. All right, that's it. I'm Ryan George.
I'm Justin Guild, aka Chef Sonic, reminding you that truth does not sell.
And I'm Tony Marinucci, aka Tips with Tony, a registered dietitian, helping you get healthy one bite at a time.
And we are
The GymWits.